Okay, let's unpack this. It sounds like we've got some pretty juicy updates, like straight from the ground level of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah, definitely.
Specifically, we're zeroing in on Daredevil, Born Again, and, the return of characters we know and love from the Defender saga.
Absolutely. We've got a few different sources here, some articles really digging into the Punisher's future. We've got confirmation of a major character coming back from a set video,
Oh yeah, saw that one.
and even some interesting speculation about powers, a specific power, actually.
Yeah. So our mission for this deep dive is kind of pull out the essential insights from these sources, connect the dots a bit, and figure out what they tell you about what's coming next for these street-level heroes.
hmm
We're talking who's back, who they might fight, and crucially, how they'll operate in a very different New York City.
Yeah, the landscape's definitely changed under Mayor Fisk. It's a city where the rules are, well, different now, dramatically different.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Let's start with Frank Castle, the Punisher.
Yep, John Bernthal.
Sources confirm he's back in the MCU, definitely appearing in Daredevil, Born Again Season 1.
Yeah.
But it's the setup for his future story that feels really key here.
Right. So according to these sources, the Born Again Season 1 finale has a post-credit scene.
Okay.
And it apparently shows Frank locked up, imprisoned in Red Hook, looks like by Fisk's people.
Makes sense.
But, being Frank Castle,
Yeah.
he finds a way out, tricks a guard, makes his escape.
Classic Frank. That's just...
Yeah.
And this escape, it's not just a cool moment, right? It's framed as the direct lead-in,
Exactly. The springboard for his upcoming special presentation.
which we're expecting on Disney Plus, maybe 2026.
That's the time frame mentioned, yeah.
Yep,
Now
yep.
he's out, he's free, and the big question is, who's he going after?
Mm.
Or maybe, who's coming after him?
And that's where one source makes a really interesting, kind of bold argument.
Uh-huh.
They argue the perfect villain for that Punisher special is Bullseye.
Bullseye. Benjamin Poindexter.
Yeah. The guy we saw doing those insane things with, like office supplies in the Born Again opening, it feels kind of out of left field. Why him? Have they even met in the MCU?
No, they haven't. But the source highlights this striking similarity, almost like a dark reflection between them. Bullseye, he's this incredible marksman, never misses, turns anything into a deadly weapon.
Right.
And he kills, well, pretty indiscriminately. For money, for kicks, whatever.
Yeah.
No real code there.
And Frank, he's also obviously a lethal killer, a huge arsenal, but he's focused, laser focused on criminals, people he thinks deserve it. Often for victims, It's this twisted moral compass that always puts him at odds with guys like Daredevil.
Exactly. The source literally calls them two sides of the same coin. Both killers,
Right.
both highly effective.
Super lethal.
But their why is completely different.
Oh.
One's about personal gain, the other is about this warped sense of justice.
And just like visually, thinking about those two fighting,
Mm.
wow.
Yeah.
We saw what Bullseye can do. That sort of almost superhuman accuracy and improvisation against Frank's brutal tactics and heavy firepower.
It would be incredible. The potential for a really jaw-dropping action sequence is definitely there.
For sure.
But it's not just about the fight itself. The sources dig into a kind of deeper strategic reason why Bullseye makes sense for Punisher right now.
Okay. What's that?
Well, it's this observation that the MCU's Punisher.
Hmm.
He hasn't really had a true nemesis, a recurring archenemy.
That's actually a really good point. I mean, Billy Russo, Jigsaw, was the closest.
Right, in his own show.
But they killed him off at the end of season 2, story over.
Exactly. And the sources argue it's tough to find ongoing enemies for Frank because, well, his solutions tend to be permanent.
Uh-huh. Yeah, fair point.
So Bullseye could fill that gap. And even though, yeah, in the comics, he's mostly a Daredevil villain.
Totally, that's his main guy.
It is.
Yeah.
But the source suggests that in the MCU, Matt Murdock's rivalry with Kingpin is just so central, so dominant.
It really is. Fisk is Daredevil's ultimate villain.
That Bullseye might always feel like, I don't know, a secondary threat in Daredevil's world. Fisk just casts too big a shadow.
Okay, yeah, I can definitely see that logic. Bullseye could get lost there.
So the idea is, pit him against the Punisher. Let Bullseye really shine there, become Frank's main adversary. You could build a rivalry just as iconic, potentially, as Daredevil versus Kingpin.
A proper foil for Frank. Interesting. Okay, so if this does happen, Punisher versus Bullseye in the special, how do the sources think it might, shake out? Who wins?
Well, they admit up front This would be one of Punisher's biggest NCU moments. A villain who can actually match him, skill for skill, physically. That's rare for Frank.
Yeah, he usually outguns or outsmarts people. This is different.
Very different. It's framed as super high stakes. Either one could absolutely kill the other, and crucially, both would be willing to.
No pulling punches there.
None. Zero. But the prediction, at least from this source, leans towards Frank Castle ultimately winning.
What?
The reasoning is sort of thematic. Frank's driven by this intense, burning passion against evil, as he sees it. That drive would probably overcome Bullseye's more selfish motives, greed, chaos in the end.
Okay. And if Punisher does manage to kill Bullseye, that sends ripples, right? Especially for his dynamic with Daredevil.
Oh, absolutely. The source points this out specifically. Killing Bullseye is something Daredevil, at least in the comics, hasn't done.
Right.
So if Frank does succeed where Matt hasn't, you can bet Frank would throw that in Matt's face.
Oh, 100%.
It would just pour gasoline on their whole lethal versus non-lethal debate. It might even force Matt to really question his own methods, his own limits.
Wow, yeah. That adds a whole other layer. Okay, let's switch gears a bit. Another huge piece of news from these sources, focusing now on Daredevil, Born Again Season 2. And this one isn't speculation, this is confirmed, and fans are pretty thrilled.
Yeah, absolutely confirmed. Krysten Ritter is officially back as Jessica Jones.
Yes. That's fantastic news. Getting her back, seeing her with Charlie Cox's Matt Murdock again after The Defenders. What was that, 2017?
Yeah, feels like ages ago.
And it's her first MCU appearance proper since her own show ended in 2019. How did we get the confirmation? The set video?
Yep, that set video that popped up online. Clear as day, Ritter and Cox filming together in New York.
And that same video, it didn't just show them, right? It gave us a peek at the new status quo under Mayor Fisk.
It did, yeah. You could also see uniformed officers from Fisk's anti-vigilante task force on the streets.
Right.
So it visually confirms what we kind of expected after the Season 1 setup. Vigilantism, being a known superhero, it's basically outlawed now in NYC.
So guys like Daredevil, like Jessica Jones, they're not just fighting the usual criminals. The city itself is hunting them.
Pretty much.
Which explains why the video showed them talking on a rooftop. Right. Gotta keep it low-key.
Exactly. They need to operate in the shadows more than ever. And from what we see, Jessica seems to still be active, still doing her thing despite the laws.
Makes sense for her character.
And the expectation, based on the sources, is that she's likely one of the people Daredevil recruits for his street-level army to push back against Fisk.
Okay. Now, tied into Jessica coming back, one source brings up something fans have talked about for years, and it feels like now might be the time. Flight. Jessica Jones flying.
Yes. The eternal question.
Right. The Netflix shows Jessica Jones and The Defenders, they definitely hinted at it.
Oh, yeah.
We saw the super jumps, that crazy leap for the elevator cable in Defenders, though it was off-screen.
Conveniently off-screen.
And she had that line, more like jumping than falling or something.
Yeah, falling with style, basically. It was always sort of there, but never full-on, Superman-style flight.
Exactly. So why do the sources think Born Again Season 2 is the place to finally show it?
Well, the argument is about tone, mostly. Born Again, especially after the creative overhaul.
Right. The showrunner changes and all that.
Yeah. It seems to be leaning into a slightly more maybe comic booky or heightened style compared to the super grounded, gritty feel of the Netflix shows.
Okay.
They point out that Born Again is already referencing stuff like Spider-Man, Ms. Marvel, even Skrulls, the things that felt kind of off limits before. And even Daredevil's own agility seems more pronounced.
So the show's visual language is just more open to that kind of power now.
That seems to be the idea. It fits better stylistically. But it's not just style. The source connects it to her character arc, too.
How so?
Showing her fly could be like a visual metaphor for her growth, her confidence, maybe finally accepting herself as a hero.
I see.
It emphasizes that she is a powerful superhero, even with all her past reluctance. And it visually contrasts her kind of heroism, messy but ultimately selfless, like we saw at the end of her show, with someone like Fisk, who just uses power corruptly.
That actually makes a lot of sense. It's not just a cool power-up. It could mean something for her journey.
Exactly. Her finally, soaring, literally and figuratively.
Okay, so pulling all this together, these sources are painting a pretty vivid picture. We've got Punisher set up for a solo mission, maybe against Bullseye in a potentially defining rivalry. And we've got Jessica Jones confirmed for Born Again Season 2, operating under Fisk's anti-vigilante laws, and maybe, just maybe, finally taking flight.
And what's really fascinating is how it all seems to be happening under this big shadow of Mayor Fisk.
Yeah.
It feels like the street-level MCU is really changing.
Yeah.
The heroes aren't just fighting muggers anymore. They're up against the system, forced underground, maybe having to rethink their own rules, especially if Punisher brings that lethal edge right back into focus.
So what this means for you, the listener, watching Daredevil, Born Again, and whatever comes next,
Yeah.
it seems like this corner of the MCU is getting way more complex, more tangled up. The stakes feel higher.
Yeah, definitely. It really brings up a big question, doesn't it? With Fisk actively hunting them, with the lines between hero and killer maybe blurring again thanks to Frank. How are the choices these characters make, the methods they use? How is that going to define what being a vigilante even means in this new MCU era? Is it about heroism or just survival?